I'm connecting to the internet.
Internet.
Networking software.
World Wide Web thing in a computer today.
Computer.
NetSurfer Pro.
I'm your host, Matt Craig.
And my name is Galen Wilson. I'm your co-host this week.
And so this is not our first episode, but this is the first episode we're recording, funny enough.
Yes.
It's not actually funny. I apologize for making a bad joke. But let's go ahead and just throw down what we're looking at, I guess.
Yes. So today we decided to do a bit of an analysis over a YouTube video called Little Runmo. It's an animation by Gooseworks, who you might know through various songs that they've done. Kind of sometimes they're like on the trend. I think like they made a song about the black hole at one point, things like that. But they also do animations. They have made this animation. Apparently, it was a long-term project, like over a couple of years. And it had released about a couple of months ago. We probably should have had his exact date before we started talking about this.
November 10th, 2019. I wrote it down.
Ah, good. But yeah, so it's if you have not seen it, we would both encourage you to honestly stop the podcast real quick and go watch it. It's about 16 minutes long, and it's exceptionally good, which is why we're talking about it.
Oh, yeah. Do you want to go ahead and like describe a bit more about it, sort of what it is?
Yes, I would. So the general idea is Little Runmo is a little video game character, sort of like a Mario-esque type, who's in a little 2D platformer, and he comes up to a little jumping challenge that kills him twice, and he goes down to one life. And the little picket fence guy, whose name is literally Picket, who talks like a Banjo-Kazooie character, which is adorable, says, I wonder what happens when you fall down a pit, which causes Little Runmo to sort of slide down the pit into the seedy underbelly of the video game. If it sounds like, a 2010 sort of weird horror animation, it's not. It's really, really clever and funny, and like there's a little bit of the, it's sweet up top, but it's creepy down below, but like it's nothing.
Yeah, it's not.
This is kind of the bulk.
It's
this
not
is the bulk of like the things I want to point out. Continue, sorry.
It's not Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared, which I was gonna say this has a lot of structural similarities to like those sort of creepy YouTube videos where it seems relatively innocuous at first and then it kind of goes weird. But Little Runmo is less about the horror and more about just atmosphere. And even then, like you said, it's not even necessarily creepy. A lot of it is jokes or like, kind of absurdity, I think is a way to put it.
Yes, it's very much like a stream of consciousness more so than a horror. Like I specifically noted down that like I would compare it less to Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared and more to something like Ukinojo, who is another animation YouTuber that does very like, absurdist animations, but like they can be quote unquote creepy, but they are the point is never to be creepy. It's more just sort of absurdity in animation form.
Right, yeah. And especially the absurdity here works really well because it kind of constantly juxtaposes itself with Mario.
Yes.
So the main like drive of Runmo is Runmo wants to get extra 1-ups. They're at one life and they don't want to lose it, and so like the first thing they see when they go down into this underworld is like the 1-up processing plant where all the spent 1-ups go. But like, the overworld, as it were, has like a weird enemy that's like a mix of a Spiny or a Buzzy Beetle and a Koopa or a Goomba.
Yeah.
Like it kind of walks back and forth.
I wrote down the name of it. It's the Little Danger.
Yeah,
I believe
the Little Danger. You mentioned that
all of the enemies have names that are revealed at the credits, and another very like Super Mario World like
Oh
esque
yeah.
thing, and it's
And,
wonderful.
and you know what's funny is you mentioned Pickett. That sounds like a Banjo Kazooie character. Literally in Ukulele, the spiritual successor, there are plankers, which are signs that talk, like wooden
That's really
signs.
cute.
So it kind of has a founding in that. But then as it goes, like there's more references to Mario. Like there's the Glorgs, which kind of act like bullet bill blasters.
Yes.
There is a little. Okay, so I think we should probably. I guess I'll go ahead and say like the ending per se.
Yeah. So, spoiler warning: you really should watch it before you watch this.
Yeah. So
but yeah, if you haven't, last warning: we're just going to lay everything out on the table.
yeah. So Little Runmo dies because the first thing he meets is the Drink King, which is a king that drinks the juice of Little Runmo's old one-ups. And Little Runmo dies by the Drink King's Glorgs that shoot him with a missile. And then he kind of frantically scurries about, meets this wrecking ball that's kind of like a womp. Goes and meets the Meatball Man, which is great.
Oh God, the Meatball Man, for clarity, is currently my Discord avatar, and he is my favorite thing in the entire animation.
Yeah.
It is such a perfect just comedy moment, divorced from even the rest of Little Runmo.
Yeah, you don't really need context to even see the Meatball Man scene.
It's so good.
There is a a security boost, which is like this weird train car.
Which shows up for like one scene just passing by. There's a lot of the like there's a lot of the things that are just like used for exactly one 10-second scene and then just sort of never gone back to. I think the only consistent thing besides Runmo is the little dangers, which show up every now and again as a running joke.
Yeah, in the background they'll be like on a shelf or something. And Pickett as well, because after he sees the security boost, he accidentally pulls Pickett down into the underworld with him.
Yeah.
And Pickett's like, "You really messed up now this time, huh?"
You shouldn't have done that, Runmo. Well, I guess that's technically a different character.
It makes me think of the Odyssey, kind of funny, because like when I think of the Odyssey, I think of how it's like about Odysseus meeting these characters for one chapter or one scene and then leaving and never returning.
Yeah.
So it's sort of like that, where it's like the focus is about Runmo meeting these characters, and then it's not about the characters coming back. It's just Runmo reacting to these different situations.
Yes. Yeah. There is no returning to previous moments because there really doesn't need to be. Like, it's one of my favorite things about it is that ultimately the entire thing still feels like a video game.
Yeah.
Like, it still all runs on video game logic, and I think a lot of the appeal is stuff like it's really little things where, like, all of Runmo's animations are kind of sort of like unique, except the overarching vibe of them is like a video game character. When he sits down, that's just one animation, quote unquote, but like there is no full animation of him sitting down. It's just like his legs being kicked up under him. Stuff like that, where it's shoddy, again in quotes, in the sense that it reuses a lot of the stuff that it used previously because it's trying to emulate a video game style.
Right, yeah. I like, so after Runmo gets caught in the Bindi, I think it's called, the like trash bin.
Binby, please pay DMC2.
Binby, please. So he gets to the like one-up processing plant and shuts it off. And then when he returns to the throne room of the Drink King is dead.
He's just bones.
He's just bones. And gets replaced by the Temp King. And I feel like that scene is like it reminds me of the Ender's Game, Giant's Game, where it's like a death trap puzzle adventure. And at one point during the book, Ender just kills a giant, and then its bones appear later in the book when he's playing the game. But it's like it's another instance of video game logic of like it's sort of structured as a puzzle that gets solved.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's like Runmo meets the unmovable wall of the drinking, and then finds the way to stop him, and then he goes back, even through like a little shortcut to the throne room.
Yeah,
it's like a little pipe.
It's really it's all very, it's clever in a very stream of consciousness way, where like things don't make sense, but they do in like they don't make sense, and they don't make sense even in context, but like they have that weird lateral joke logic, basically. Like it is inherently funny for the drinking's machine to be turned off and then just teach us bones.
Yeah.
Like that is inherently hilarious because, you know, that effectively doesn't logically follow, but also does logically follow.
Yeah. It's like it makes just enough sense because it is a video game world.
Yeah.
Even though like it constantly tries to contrast the overworld with the underworld. I think one of the cool things is how when Runmo first goes into the underworld, he like sees how it's 3-dimensional and then presses his face up against the foreground.
Yeah.
It really immediately, like the overworld is completely 2-dimensional, and it's layered like a typical video game with background and foreground, but the foreground is just where Runmo is walking with all the objects and enemies. But then like the moment he gets underground, it's 3D. There's depth to it.
Yeah, it's
Well,
a
not
really
3D,
interesting,
but yeah.
yeah, 2.5D effectively. But like it's a really interesting sort of, you know, it's an immediate signal beyond just change in location that this is a different world, quote unquote.
Yeah.
I'm going to be saying that a lot.
So after the Temp King comes down, it eats Runmo, but Runmo doesn't immediately die. Instead, Runmo gets the what is it? The hold on, the gastral giveaway.
Oh yeah, the gastral giveaway.
It's like a bonus game show. It has this really silly announcer.
Yeah.
Runmo hits a block to spin a wheel, which is, you know, another Mario.
The wheel of Funbus.
Yeah, the wheel of Funbus. It's another overtly Mario thing to hit a block to spin a wheel. Hold on one second. Right. And so, I think it's really funny. Like it's building up to the bad ending for this wheel, but when Runmo hits death, it kills the Temp King. Because the whole time he's been inside the Temp King.
Which is also just a wonderful joke in its own right.
Yeah, it's like a bait and switch.
Yeah.
But then that's when the corpse... the Bonekeeper appears and carries the Temp King's corpse to a morgue. And then when they enter the morgue, Runmo slips out of the Bone King's throat and sees Little Jumpmo, and this is like the next big twist. So something I think is really funny is Runmo sort of, as like the video, is kind of like a bunch of one-liner jokes about Mario. Like there's the joke that's like you know, oh, do you think at the bottom of the pits in Mario there's a bunch of Mario corpses because every time he dies he leaves a corpse there.
Yeah.
Or isn't it weird how the 1-ups in Mario are just Mario's head? Or like the life counter is Mario's head.
Yeah, it's all the like sort of observational humor about, you know, Mario and other platformers just sort of brought to a natural conclusion.
Yeah. In this case, Runmo decapitates Jumpmo, and when he does so, it counts as an extra life, but it glitches out. And the whole universe kind of glitches out, and
and it spawns. I've written down the name because again, this there's a lot of, again, I'm going to bring up Ukinojo. There's a lot of Joe-esque names: the Wheel of Fundus, the Glorgs, etc. It brings Grumbletombus Marble Eyes, the god of the concept of life, to punish Runmo for messing with the natural order, messing with the concept of life.
Yeah,
A life in the pursuit of life is more dangerous than a life in pursuit.
right. I was gonna say first, the god of the concept of life says like a crime has been committed.
Yeah.
It's never really clear what exactly it is. It's kind of like cannibalism in a way, but also it's sort of like this is the one thing that was never meant to happen in the game. Like everything up until this point, even though it seems like it wasn't meant to happen by like a normal game standards, it goes smoothly. And when Runmo dies, he respawns at the start of the main level anyways. But like this is the thing that sets it off. I think it's kind of interesting that it's Jump Mo specifically. It's kind of like the difference between, again, Mario and Jumpman. The late Jump Mo was clearly, well, not clearly, but it's like a different character, but it's also the same character.
And it's the bringing of him back, in a sense, in a very lateral sense, is the crime, kind of. It's partially that. Interesting thing is that, within the logic of the world, tearing off the head completely works. Because, like you said, it's, isn't it weird that all the one-ups are just Mario's head?
Exactly.
And, like, it completely works, but that's the problem. Like, the problem is that it does work. And so, it's, I don't know, it's strange even by the world standards, but once again, it'll go ahead.
I was gonna say it's also that Jump Mo is yellow, and so it's almost like even though it's a 1-up, it's not the right 1-up. That like Runmo now has a mix of Runmo and Jump Mo lives.
Yeah.
It's like this. It's sort of like a necromancy, a forbidden magic, which I think is really fitting. Anyways, so the god of the concept of life captures Runmo in a marble and kind of runs along, and I think
comes up to the exact same jumping challenge.
Yeah, my favorite moment is how like the universe is getting like torn apart at the seams, and this god character, it starts to zoom out, and then you realize he's running on a platform, and then you see him jump and run into the exact same spike wall, but in like this astral form.
Yeah.
And it comes out of nowhere and happens really quickly, which is great.
Yeah.
But then
that I think another small point of like why this doesn't bother like that sort of creepy sensor is that, barring, I think, specifically the god of the concept of life, everything that could be creepy is completely and utterly not foreshadowed, but it's just sort of laid out bare. There's no jump scare. It's just sort of there.
Right.
So like when the Glorgs are spawned, the Glorgs are weird, creepy looking things, but like they're spawned because the Drain King punches a button that says Glorgs. The little speakeasy phone thing is a weird, mouth with a microphone inside of it, but it comes up in response to Jump Mo being there, basically, instead of on the overworld. So like there's no like "don't hug me, I'm scared" heart suddenly out of nowhere. It's all very open, effectively. Right. The god of the concept of life is probably the one jump scare of the entire thing, if you could even call him that.
Right. It's just so different from everything else. Even more so than the overworld underworld comparison. I think another part of that is that um all the things that are designed kind of creepily are completely played for laughs or like are, you know, ineffective.
Yeah.
Whereas the only thing that Runmo is actively scared of is the Meatball Man, which doesn't have a creepy design. It is,
Yes.
and even then, its theme music is still very, very comedic.
Yes. Oh
It's like a
goodness.
YTPMV remix of somebody screaming.
Oh, I am exactly for like somebody is going to make that YTP remix with that scream, you know the one.
Yeah.
Um
but
but
but yeah, like all the creepy stuff is a joke. You know,
yeah.
Runmo isn't afraid of anything except the Meatball Man, which
Yeah.
actually just kind of highlights the Meatball Man even more in its absurdity.
I, actually another good point too is like not only is it a joke, but like it's very slapstick. So Runmo is basically a very slapstick character. When he falls, he, you know, splats down with like his limbs all twisted and then just jumps back up to his natural pose. And so like all of the damage that he takes, all of the like stuff that happens to him is all completely played as a video game sort of logic. Like the I think the one exception is the Glorgs where like he takes the bullet, which is very video game, and it like caves into his head like in a very squishy manner, like a very animation style. And then the Glorg like starts running him over, kind of, which like it does like, you know, just sort of stretches him out, like weirdly tweens his body, but doesn't actually do anything. And then the Glorg like spins around and stuff like that. Like that's the sort of stuff that, again, you know, in a 2010s animation would be, you know, oh, he gets run over and like his guts sort of start pouring out, and, you know, oh, it's so creepy, laugh. But it's not. It's in this, it's, you know, all played as a video game. It's all played as slapstick. It's all played as laughs.
Yeah, I
So
think on that note, when I first saw Runmo's character, I thought it kind of looked like a, I don't know, like a Beanie Baby, like a stuffed animal, but one that would be, you know, kind of cheaply made.
yeah,
In its eyes have like the pupils of his eyes kind of look like buttons in that regard.
yeah,
So I think the like caving in the skull and running him over and like stretching him out didn't affect me that much because I expected him to be, you know,
a
squishy.
squishy sort of, yeah,
And
a
even then,
squishy and very like,
I was gonna say like when he gets hit by the spikes on the spike wall, he doesn't even like bleed from that. He flashes red and then falls into the pit,
yeah,
almost like hit stun. So like, it's not even like you see any brutal destruction at that point, really.
yeah,
Yeah, he bounces back. Oh, and so anyways, after the god of the concept of life dies, Runmo respawns at the start of the game, comes to that spike trap, and successfully gets over it by wall jumping underneath it, and then finds that there was a one up right after the spike trap. It
then
zooms in on Runmo, looks all happy, but then he runs off the universe where you see everything still kind of destroyed. The Meatball Man has some of its meat torn off, and he has like a skull. The skull of the Drink King.
there's another little danger that's just walking on a completely disembodied platform.
Yeah, and Runmo just kind of poofs.
Yeah.
And so the pursuit of life is more dangerous than a life in pursuit. I think what this makes me think of is like glitches in video games that can permanently damage the cartridge it's on. So,
Yeah,
or like memory corruption or save corruption or like using shady third-party hacks, you know, like when you get like an action replay or whatever, or Game Genie, it's like, you know, be careful with this, and it could corrupt the game and ruin it. But like that's sort of literally what happens is Runmo wants to get extra lives, and so Runmo ends up destroying the universe doing so. And even when he gets past the spike trap, not even any thanks to the extra lives, there's nothing on the other side. The universe is destroyed. It's very like a, ruining everything for the sake of a goal that wasn't even worth it sort of story.
Yeah, and it all sort of, it leads up to a very just sort of, completely it's not a downer ending. It's not what I'm thinking of. It's a very complete anticlimax.
Yeah.
Where he just sort of runs off and then poofs.
Yeah.
And like that's where the video ends, besides the credits, which has all of the names of all of the things. And it's very...
It reminds me of the copy pasta that's like, you cheated not only the game, but yourself. It was a hollow victory.
Oh, God, you're right.
Yeah, because that's essentially what happens is Runmo cheats the game and, gets nothing in return that he couldn't have gotten otherwise.
Yeah.
Also, what's interesting to me is that, like, since the video starts on this level, I kind of assumed it was the first level in the game. I don't think there's any, like, 1-1 or anything that implies that it actually is the first level.
Yeah.
But it makes you think, like, what if Runmo just died when he had 0 lives? Would he have just restarted at the level again? Would there have been a difference?
Would he have met the same fate as Jumpmo, or would he have just sort of continued?
Yeah.
Like,
Because, again, he ends up beating the spike trap just by normal platforming, and the lives didn't really do anything. He actually loses a life for going into the underworld at first, so, like, he could have netted an extra life by not doing so. So, I don't know. I think that's sort of an interesting thing, is it's another sort of jab at a Mario observation. Like, when Mario gets a game over, is he dead? Or, or sort of looking at the mentality that, like, it's okay to lose all your lives and get a game over if you're early in the game, because you can just start over and not lose too much progress.
Yeah, there's a very sort of, not sure exactly how to put it, like, there's an element where we're not looking at this as someone playing a video game, because it's not positioned to, like, it's positioned to us as a video game, but the stakes within it are positioned as Runmo. It's positioned as Runmo himself.
Exactly.
So, like, we as the audience we are looking at this as a video game, but we consider the stakes the same as Runmo's, because Runmo doesn't know that he has one more life after 0, or that he'll just restart.
Yeah, exactly. It's not quite irony, but it's this weird juxtaposition where the audience is kind of forced to immerse themselves more than they would a regular video game of this type, and, like, get involved in the like you said, the stakes of Runmo more so than we would get involved the stakes of Mario.
Yeah.
I think so. The spike trap itself reminds me of, like, I Want to Be the Guy, or Sib on Action Cat Mario, if you've heard of that. As, like, it's not too out of place nowadays for a Mario parody video game. There's been a few of these before where, like, the idea behind the video game is that it's hard, but also it's supposed to be unfair, because it's like, if you look at specifically Cat Mario Sib on Action, like, the point isn't that you can react to the difficulty, it's that it is slapstick, where when you get hit by a dumb trap, you're supposed to laugh at it, and then in the future that the trap exists. It's
trial and error, because it's playing upon your expectation of a normal platformer.
Right. That's sort of what the spike trap does, but also I mean, the underworld exploration part is also, it kind of fits this thing. You know, Runmo goes to the drinking and dies for it. So in the next life, he goes the opposite direction and is able to get past the drinking in a different way. You know, that's
Yeah.
like, that still follows the structure of dying to a trap and exploring another route to get around the trap. Um, and so I kind of want to ask you a question. How do you think this would work as a real video game? Because, like,
Well,
I could picture this being extrapolated, I guess, kind of extended, as if, like, you were to make it a game where falling down a pit sends you into this complex underworld of weird characters and death traps.
yeah. So, interestingly, as a small note, I went to the artist's Twitter just a little bit afterwards, and they did mention something like, I believe that they said that they have no plans to, but if anybody would like want to make a fan game, then they were more than willing. Like they could easily use the property effectively.
Mm-hmm.
So like that's a very real question to ask, basically, because that's something that could happen. Um, the way I would expect the video game to work, the hypothetical Little Runmo the game, the movie, the game, is I would expect it to be. It would have to be a sort of like multiple path, like I, I'm thinking of a video game that I can't remember the name of. It was like a text adventure that literally you could only enter one action, and then every single one of those actions had their own ending. So it would be a game where, like, you hard reset the game, and just every single path you take has a logical, in its own world, ending that it leads you to. Stanley Parable is
Oh,
probably the
yeah.
video game that I'm thinking of. That would be a better comparison to this, where you just have your notable start point once it's hard reset, but like within that life and within those three lives, it would just like have 100 different alternate routes you could take. So there would be the obvious one where you just do level 1-1 as is, but you go down the first pit like you do in the video, and you meet with and you like go to the right, you're going to get to the Dring King, and you'll have to try to outrun the Glorgs. You go to the left, and you'll go to the wrecking ball that you'll have to try and avoid. So like that's what I would expect it to be, is just sort of a singular opening point, which is that level, but then like every pit brings you to a different area in the underworld.
Right.
you know
Yeah, like it sort of like kind of framing it as death not being the fail state but being an end state
yeah,
kind of helps ease the pain from dying to a dumb trap.
yeah,
And
exactly.
it makes you want to explore for the weird characters. I think Stanley Parable's a good sort of comparison. I kind of picture it could work sort of like I Want to Be the Guy as like an exploration, almost Metroidvania, but with the idea that everywhere you go is constant death and destruction, and
Yeah,
you're meant to explore and find out the safest route through the world, but maybe with more save points than this game. But I think
yeah,
like I like the video has consistent mechanics, if that makes sense. Except for maybe when Runmo puts his face towards the glass. Like, Runmo runs and jumps and wall slides and crouches, and except for that foreground breaking moment, for the most part that's about it.
yeah.
And
It's
everything else can easily be translated to video game controls, especially because with its roots in Mario, going into a door or interacting with an object, like those are pretty common inputs to do in a platformer.
yeah.
And I think that's part
it
of.
has its own internal mechanical logic, even if it's just an animation. So like it's not something that would be difficult to translate to a 2D platformer.
Right,
Honestly,
exactly.
even stuff like his weight and his traction could probably be extrapolated from the video itself.
Right, yeah. And I think that's like sort of part of why the video works is because it sticks to its own logic, which is why it feels like a video game and not just like an adventure that starts in a video game world. If that makes sense. You know, if you look at like I hate to say it, but anime where people get trapped in a video game, like they don't keep the they don't keep the video game logic consistent that often to where like you forget it was a video game in the first place. But the fact that everything's consistent, like you said, like the run cycles are kept the same, it constantly reminds you like this is all one constructed thing. And I think if, you know, it was different too much throughout it, then it wouldn't feel as much like a video game. So those comparisons to like Mario and other video games where characters die a lot would be a lot harder to make, and even subconsciously.
I think another interesting sort of thing is that even in this hypothetical video game, like even within the world, even within the animation, the different types of challenges are all highly varied. So like it would not be sort of it would not be necessarily like a Cuphead where every single one is just an individual unique boss fight, which like I'm not disparaging Cuphead, I should quickly say. It's still very good, but like the Meatball Man is a pure sprint. The Drink King is, you know, fighting off minions and running away from minions to possibly trying to, you know, outmaneuver the minions to get to the Drink King himself. The Temp King is, you know, a mini game. So like every boss fight is not just a different type of difficult challenge, difficult platforming. It's, you know, it uses minimal mechanics to sort of do a whole lot more just sort of by focusing on different aspects of those mechanics. So I imagine the Meatball Man would just sort of be like an ever-present door that you can always attempt, but you will never have the upgrades to actually make it to the other side until very like late. I assume that this would be like a sort of thing where, you know, death is an end state, but like even a restart state will have different upgrades, you know?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it like I think that's sort of an interesting point, is that while the overworld is completely platformer, the challenges that Runmo faces in the underworld are all like really different, which I think also is part of what makes it feel kind of more like Runmo isn't supposed to be there, because it kind of has this constant backroom sort of feel that, you know, this isn't where Runmo's supposed to be. And like, you know, the Drinking having these weird cannons that run, or they like go on these wheels at a weird speed and don't have any clear weak point, or like, you know, the fact that there's this meatball, like I guess it's vaguely platformery, but at the same time there's so many things that don't appear to be, you know, defeatable or, you know, conquerable in a platformer sense, that
there's a whole lot that sort of there's a whole lot that doesn't have the like Nintendo here's the obvious weak points dumbass sort of thing. You know, it's how do you defeat a Meatball Man?
Yeah. Or maybe a better way to put it is that when like as it progresses, you kind of see in hindsight how it's supposed to be done, but when it first appears it seems completely foreign to the platforming style that Runmo is in. So like I think that's a better way to put it, that when you see Runmo do it, it makes sense. Like you know, shutting off this machine kills the drinking, or you get swallowed by this temp king that otherwise Runmo can't pass, but then like you hit this trivia bonus game and that ends up, or not trivia, this wheel bonus game, and that ends up letting you live. It's like it doesn't feel at first like there's a way for Runmo to go through it, but then it makes sense how Runmo does it. And that sort of even the god of the concept of life dies to a platforming challenge, which I think is funny. It kind of makes you think, like, instead of it being that Runmo isn't supposed to be there, it's that Runmo is supposed to be there, but it doesn't seem like it at first.
Yeah,
but the more you see Runmo conquer these challenges, I think the more comfortable it becomes, to where when the god of the concept of life appears, it feels less scary because, like, you kind of get by now that Runmo is going to be able to do something.
Yeah. I think the way to like phrase how the game works is that Runmo has all of the abilities and mechanics of a platformer, but he's in kind of like an adventure game world in the underworld.
Yeah.
And that would probably have to be the crux in a theoretical fan game, is like you can only create challenges that you could in some way solve with platformer mechanics, but the challenges should be positioned like with not platformer mindset in mind necessarily.
It's Dragon Lair SNES. Dragon's Lair SNES.
I mean,
how like the arcade version of Dragon's Lair was, Dragon's Lair. It's an interactive DVD or Laserdisc, but the SNES version was like a platformer, quote unquote, but the actual way to clear the screens ended up basically being the same as the arcade game, which was just pressing the right buttons at very specific cues based on visuals and sounds. Like normally in a platformer, you have some freedom as to when you move, when you jump. That's sort of how I kind of reconcile this game or this video as a platformer.
Yeah, it's like a platformer, but yeah.
All right. Do you have any other notes on this game? I mean, this video of a game. God, really blurring the lines.
Oh goodness, our own reality is crushing. I don't believe I strictly do. I know that some other little notes is that the author, the creator of the video, Gooseworks, found some inspiration in character design by Felix Colgrave, who, if you have not seen any of his videos, don't worry, I haven't either. I've only seen the thumbnails, but you would probably recognize the thumbnails.
I would actually recommend the music video for Source by Fever the Ghost, which is animated by Felix Colgrave. And it's another one where, like, the character designs are kind of weird, but it's ultimately played more for laughs.
Yeah.
But you can tell that the concession stand worker is very similar to Felix Colgrave's characters.
Yeah, that was actually very another little note that I had was that Gooseworks apparently debated for a very long time whether or not it would be more funny for the concession stand to just be in the background, or if it would be funnier for the Bonekeeper to actually stop for snacks. I think that they made the right choice in the end, because I think the little snack stop is just hilarious.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's you should totally like go back through Gooseworks' Twitter if you want just like interesting trivia about sort of how they created the video, because there's just sort of a whole lot of like little bits of commentary that you wouldn't immediately think about otherwise.
Right. And I would also recommend looking up Cat Mario or Sibon Action, Syobon Action, because, like I said, that kind of is what context I first saw Little Runmo in, and at the very least, it's another interesting internet relic that might be fun to look at.
Yeah. It was definitely like a different. It was definitely like a different time on the internet, but Sibon Action, I do remember as being, one of the more like interesting takes on the sort of, platformer that completely subverts everything you expect about platformers. It was a lot more interesting than stuff like I don't know, the unfair platformer or whatever, like those sorts of things. It was funny, basically.
In the future, I do want to do an episode on I Want to Be the Guy in Sub on Action, because those two are pretty heavily linked. But for now, thank you for listening.
Yes, thank you very much for listening to me and the boys doing a podcast. I've been Galen.
And I've been Matt. You can follow me on Twitter at MattCraigGaming to get updates on the podcast.
And you'll eventually be able to follow me, but I'm currently just sort of getting things started as far as internet presence goes. So, just keep an ear out.
For now, the presents will be a mystery, like a wrapped gift. A mystery gift, if you will. And this has been my mystery gift to you. It's a EV with 4 speed IVs, and everything else is bad.
Oh, is it at least Gigantamax?
No, it's normal Max. In fact, it has the nickname Max, and you can't change it.
Oh, what?
All right, see ya.